Welcome back to the program. He works in South Korea, but we tracked down this criminal investigator in London, where we got to know him a little bit more. This is the announcement that sparked the media's interest into this highly successful but unassuming gentleman. Out of 12 candidates, Ibrahim Pam made the shortlist for the coveted position of registrar at the International Criminal Court. We talked to him about life in the public eye since then. Prior to all the cameras coming into your life at this time, who would you say Ibrahim Pam is?
Nigerian. I'm a criminal justice practitioner. I've worked in a number of jurisdictions, as you said, in different international organizations. I always intended to be a lawyer. Not sure that I would have taken this path. I was a litigator. I was practicing in Lagos as a civil litigator and also criminal justice. But yes, life takes different turns.
How did that go, practicing in Lagos as a litigator?
Fantastic. It was the greatest, the best way to get into legal practice. The Lagos courts are vibrant. The legal practice is dynamic. It's really good.
He's come a long way since then and currently works on the Asian continent. So at the moment you work out of South Korea, and many people have said, what's it like working in that space?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge is food. But okay. It's a privilege to work in South Korea. It's a privilege to have the opportunity to work outside of your country, to learn a new culture, to be welcomed by a new people. South Korea is one of the world's biggest economies. It's a very well-developed country. There are cultural experiences there that you cannot replicate elsewhere. It's really a wonderful experience.
From the wealth of experience he has garnered across the continents, he shares this perspective about the ICC and its procedures. Let's talk about the ICC and how this sort of, shall I say, catapulted you into the, well, not into the limelight because you've been there, but into increasing relevance. So 88 applications were received and then you were shortlisted. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a validation of everything I've done until now. Of course, it's an honor to be on the shortlist, and I do accept that privilege with some humility. But, you know, the International Criminal Court is a very important institution. It's the expression of the global commitment to accountability for mass crimes. The origins of it are very historical, and it takes its origins, its jurisprudential origins from the immediate post-World War II period, the determination of the international community in forming the United Nations organization to end the scourge of war and to hold people accountable for the worst crimes. So it's quite a privilege to be considered. Clearly there is a lot of competition in getting to be selected to that position. But I feel absolutely well suited for it. Yeah. I think my experience, my background prepares me adequately for it. But of course, with due respect to all the other candidates that were shortlisted as well.
But what about those who look at the ICC and they frown on the nature of its operations when it comes to holding leaders or past leaders accountable, talking about the whole African issue where you find a majority of people who are being prosecuted are either African or, rather not from the West. What do you feel about that argument?
The International Criminal Court has a dual character. So it's both a judicial institution as well as an international organization. And those two elements of it require two different approaches. As a judicial institution, it draws a lot of attention in terms of its prosecutorial policy and prosecutorial approach. Now, that's the job of the prosecutor and, of course, the judges. But if I may stray into that area slightly,
We would like you to.
So you would find that some of the elements of the arguments are lost in the public discussion. And one very important element of it, I'll say two, is firstly that the court is driven by it was created by the consensus of states, with the exception of a few states. So it's a product of national consensus and international consensus. It's a treaty-based organization. And this treaty was ratified by about 122 member states now. And it's significant to know that Senegal, an African country, was the first country to ratify the Statute of Rome. Now, you would find that the majority of African cases that the court manages were referred by the African states themselves, with the exception of the situation in Libya, the situation in Darfur. And so what the ICC is a complementary judicial institution. It is complementary to national jurisdictions. So some of those arguments do not take into account the character of the court and the nature of judicial proceedings. And of course, Kenya, by the way, is the other one. So when the arguments are put forward, there is some legitimacy to them in the sense that international criminal proceedings require some derogation from state sovereignty. But this is what states have themselves submitted to.
He feels privileged to serve the international community in the area of accountability, correcting the erroneous narrative often associated with Nigerians.
I have had the privilege to see my ambitions come to fruition. My greatest ambition in terms of my professional career has been serving the international community in the area of criminal justice and accountability. My greatest accomplishment, my greatest joy has been working in the International Criminal Court, bringing justice to the most deprived, the most vulnerable communities, and in the United Nations system as well. I've served in field missions all over Africa, and I've worked in many parts of the world. But just the opportunity to bring justice to deprived communities and victims, that's been a privilege.
And in terms of his work back home, we sought his views about the criminal justice system in Nigeria and how the diaspora can help.
Well, let me say that, and I'll tie this to the anti-corruption work and not to politics. I think that our anti-corruption approach needs to be slightly refined. And I know that, for example, the ICPC is doing quite a bit in this area, which is that coming at anti-corruption work from a retributive justice perspective, investigating and trying corrupt people, is only one small part of the equation. We've got to strengthen our preventative capacity. What does that mean? So if you pan back to the administration between 1999 and 2007, there was a big effort to institute what they call due process. What that is targeted at is reducing the occurrence of corruption at the procurement level, because a lot of the grand corruption really comes from inflation of contracts, from over-invoicing, from all of the negative practices that go into government expenditure. That's where you've got to tackle the problem. You've got to plug those leakages in order to, at the front end, deal with the loss of revenues. And that's the problem. You see, it's not how effective the EFCC or the ICPC is. They can only achieve so much. And they're only, in my estimation, a small part of the problem, or the solution rather. The big solution is in preserving government revenues before they are expended.
As one watching from the outside, what sort of counsel would you like to give?
quicker dispensation of justice. You have accused persons awaiting trial for years and years. All of that adds to the pressure, and the system is unable to deal with that pressure for too long. But of course, in a developing economy, there are priorities all around. And so how do you prioritize the penal system or even the judicial system over other areas of the economy? That's a challenge.
Mr. Pam credits his success to hard work and a sound upbringing, and he speaks fondly about his parents. His late father, Lieutenant Colonel James Yakubu Pam, was the fourth Nigerian to receive the Queen's Commission from the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst in 1955. He served as an Adjutant General of the Nigerian Army who succeeded Yakubu Gowon. It's in this position that he was killed in the first military coup in January 1966. His mother, Elizabeth Auntie Pam, was a Federal Electoral Commissioner and one of the first women from northern Nigeria to graduate in 1956 from the Nigerian College of Arts and Technology, now known as Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. He beams with pride as he speaks about his family life. So when you're not at work, for instance, or you're not reading an article or policy papers, what are you doing?
So I spend a lot of time with family.
Okay.
And that's the real pleasure of my life. However, yes, they do complain about the amount of time I spend working. Yes. So even when on holiday, you've got to pay attention to work, and you don't get enough holidays.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot of spare time to play football with my sons.
How many of them would you like to talk about your family?
Yes, I've got a wife, a lovely lady. We have 5 children.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I have 4 grandchildren. And yeah, they're the highlight of my life. Really.
What an interesting career. No doubt adherence to the rule of law guarantees justice, peaceful coexistence, and respect for human rights, all of which are entrenched in the Nigerian Constitution. It appears the law is not the problem, but its execution. Perhaps it's not surprising that experts like Mr. Pam continue to call for reforms in the administration of justice delivery. And that's the show. Do catch up with all our previous editions online at www.channelstv.com. I'm Ijeoma Onyato. See you next time.